Niha village, nestled quietly beside the gentle Kai River, a prosperous village with moss-covered tiled roofs and winding dirt paths weaving through rows of green bamboo. At the heart of the village stood an ancient communal house, its curved roof arching like a blade slicing the sky, guarded by two stone dogs weathered by time. Right beside the village gate, a colossal banyan tree stretched its gnarled roots deep into the earth, its dense foliage shading a vast area where children played and elders sat to enjoy the breeze, recounting stories of old. Life here flowed calmly like the waters of the Kai River, day after day, season after season, simple and peaceful. That is, until a waning moon night in April tore this peace apart forever. The first victim was Mai, a young woman with a tragic fate. Mai was beautiful, with the kind of gentle, earthy beauty of rural girls, but her eyes always held a deep, enduring sadness. Unmarried yet pregnant, her growing belly became the subject of whispers and disdainful glances. The one who had sown life within her, a man named Kwang from another town, vanished after sweet promises, leaving Mai alone to face the storm of gossip and judgment. That night, she was seen wearing a bright red aojai, the color of a wedding happiness she would never know. She wandered like a ghost toward the stone bridge at the edge of the village. No one knew how long she stood there, staring down into the dark, icy water below. By the next morning, only her wooden clogs remained neatly on the bridge. Her body was recovered 3 days later, bloated and pale, the red of her dress streaked like a massive bloodstain. Mai's death cast a somber shadow over the village, yet people dismissed it as a foolish act of despair. She was hastily buried in a corner of the cemetery, and the story gradually faded into oblivion. But exactly 1 month later, on the 14th night of May, tragedy struck again. A woman in her early 30s, gentle and content with a loving husband and well-behaved children, abruptly abandoned her unfinished meal and silently walked to the bridge, throwing herself into the river before the horrified eyes of her family. The villagers hired a team of fishermen, dragging nets through the river section, but her body was never found. They called in a shaman to perform a ritual, who declared that her spirit had been detained by the river deity, forbidden to ascend. From then on, an invisible fear began to seep into every household, every narrow alley of Niha. The stone bridge, once a place for lovers' meetings and children's playful breezes, became eerily silent. And then, like a cruel curse, every 14th night of the lunar month, someone would die at that fateful river bend. The victims came in all ages, genders, and social standings. There were elderly farmers who had lived honest lives, strong young men, even a 12-year-old child. The only commonality was that they all died in the same spot on the same day. 7 months, 7 lives. The once peaceful village was now submerged in grief and confusion. The air was thick with a gloomy heaviness. Laughter disappeared, replaced by whispers of fear and wary glances. People began to spread chilling tales of the water demon beneath the bridge, of the ghost of Mai in the red dress haunting the nights in search of someone to replace her. Daylight seemed powerless against the cold darkness that constantly threatened to descend. Niha village was dying, slowly, consumed by fear.
As the situation grew increasingly severe, Elder Hawk, the highly respected village head, could no longer sit idly by. One night at the end of October, when fear had reached its peak after the 7th death, he decided to convene an emergency meeting at the communal house. Night descended over the village like a heavy black shroud, oppressive and suffocating. The wind blowing in from the river carried a biting chill, dampness, and the pungent scent of mud, making people shiver involuntarily. Inside the ancient communal house, dozens of torches were lit, placed along the rows of dark, polished wooden pillars. The flickering flames danced, illuminating anxious, haggard faces and casting twisted, ghostly shadows on the walls. The air was thick and silent, pierced only by the crackling of burning torches and sorrowful sighs. On the altar of the village guardian deity, a large incense stick released a hazy blue smoke, drifting through the space like a melancholy spirit. Elder Hawk sat on the highest platform, his normally ruddy face now gray, his wrinkles deeper than ever. He sat in silence for a long moment, his aged eyes sweeping over the villagers seated below, then let out a heart-wrenching sigh. His voice, low and hoarse, broke the silence. Respected elders, fellow villagers, since our ancestors settled here and established Niha village through countless hardships, we have never faced a calamity as terrible as this. 7 months, 7 lives. On every 14th night, our village witnesses a death, all at the stone bridge. As the head of this village, I cannot eat, cannot sleep, and truly do not know how to preserve the village from this disaster. Elder Hawk's words hit the crowd like a stone thrown into a still pond, stirring a wave of murmurs and anxious chatter. The fear that people had tried to suppress for so long suddenly erupted. Amid the crowd, the village shaman, a thin man with a flushed face, awkwardly pulled out a pipe, lit it, and took a deep, long puff. He then drank from the flask he always carried, exhaling a thick cloud of smoke, and spoke in a sing-song tone. "Respected Elder Hawk, respected villagers, this is no ordinary matter for mortals. Last night, I and Elder Hawk went to the river bend and set up a ritual. I drew a divination lot 3 times. All showed great misfortune. On the 4th try, it became perfectly clear. According to the divination, beneath our village bridge lurks a violent water demon. It is the one responsible for taking 7 lives. If we do not find a way to restrain it soon, I fear our entire village will face utter destruction." The shaman's words poured more fuel onto the flames of fear, causing the communal house to fall into chaos. Everyone's face drained of color. At that moment, Scholar Dobu, an elderly but calm and wise man, hurriedly spoke. "Respected Elder Hawk, whether these are spirits or illusions is uncertain, but human life comes first. In my humble opinion, we cannot rely solely on rituals. For now, Elder Hawk should have 2 watch huts set up at either end of the bridge. Then select the strongest and bravest young men in the village, compensate them fairly, and have them stand guard day and night. Should anyone attempt a foolish act, they must be stopped immediately. Only then might we be able to save lives." Scholar Dobu's suggestion was met with agreement from Elder Hawk and the other village elders. It was like a faint glimmer of hope piercing the dark night of fear. Immediately, the villagers pitched in, some offering labor, others material support. A plan was set in motion. Though no one could be certain it could resist the invisible supernatural force, at least it sparked a fragile hope. The meeting concluded deep into the night. Villagers gradually departed, their torches now reduced to flickering embers, weak lights struggling against the vast darkness surrounding Niha village.
The very next morning, the entire Niha village gathered to erect 2 watch huts made of bamboo and palm leaves at either end of the stone bridge. The task of selecting the guards was carried out urgently. After some discussion, 4 names were called, all men known for their bravery, each carrying their own story. In the eastern watch hut were 2 brothers, Mao and Ham. The elder, Mao, had just turned 30, tall and well-built. He had a wife and children and had spent several years in the military, experiencing the horrors of war and facing death at every turn. Mao's face was always stern and reserved, but his eyes reflected an unusual determination and courage.
The younger brother, Han, 6 years his junior, was more agile and lively. Han was an expert hunter, spending his days in the forest tracking wild animals. His skills went beyond handling bow and traps. He had a keen intuition for dangers lurking in the darkness. Many times he had faced wild boars and tigers alone. To these two brothers, perhaps even demons were merely a type of wild beast to be dealt with. The western watch hut was assigned to Hoen and a young man named Nhan. Hoen was nearing 50, his life marked by hardship. He and his wife were childless, and apart from his gambling habit, sometimes losing entire nights and all his money at the tables, he was a strong, courageous man. Villagers still remember seeing him lift a massive log alone to build a house. Perhaps he accepted this job partly for the generous pay and partly to do something meaningful for the village, to fill the emptiness in his heart. The youngest of the four, Nhan, had just turned 20. He had the physique of a scholar, but his eyes were bright and resolute. He did not volunteer for courage or money alone. His bedridden elderly mother had been sick for months, and he needed money for her medicine. Nhan did not believe in ghosts. To him, poverty and sickness were far more terrifying than any spirit. Every evening, as the sun disappeared behind the mountains, the four of them would head to their watch huts. At first, the work was not particularly arduous. They sat together around a pot of hot tea, chatting about everything under the sun to chase away the stillness of the night. Occasionally, they would patrol the bridge, peering into the dark waters below, listening to the chirping of insects and the wind whistling through the leaves. The first nights passed quietly, yet a tense atmosphere lingered. Every strange sound, a snapping branch, an owl's hoot in the distance, made their hearts race. They felt as though hundreds of invisible eyes were watching them from the depths of the river, from the dense foliage along the banks. The chill came not only from the night air, but from a primal fear seeping slowly into their bones. They were guarding a fragile boundary between life and death, between the mortal world and some unseen malevolent force.
The lunar month of November passed in a haze of anxiety and apprehension throughout Yeehaw village. And then the night everyone feared arrived, the 14th. Tonight, not a single star pierced the sky. Dark clouds swirled like colossal monsters, signaling a storm was about to strike. The wind howled in fierce gusts, lashing the bamboo groves along the paths, producing mournful sounds like the wails of hundreds of restless spirits. In the watch huts, the four men sat in oppressive silence, not exchanging a single word. Suddenly, from the direction of the village, Nhan noticed a small figure approaching. In the weak glow of the storm lantern, he recognized Tiem, the only daughter of Scholar Chi. Tiem was the village's most beautiful flower. She was not only innocent and pure in appearance, but also literate, gentle, and well-mannered. Everyone in the village adored her. But tonight, Tiem was different. She glided forward, her vacant eyes staring straight ahead, her long hair cascading to obscure most of her face. Her movements were rigid, swaying unnaturally, like a wooden puppet jerked by invisible strings. A cold shiver ran down Nhan's spine. He shouted, "Tiem, where are you going at this hour?" His voice seemed not to reach her ears. She continued, moving faster and faster. Sensing imminent danger, Nhan and Huan dashed out of their hut. Ma and Ham from the other hut also noticed and ran toward her. But they were a step too late. When the four men were only a few paces away, Tiem suddenly surged forward like an arrow toward the bridge railing. She climbed up with astonishing agility and without hesitation hurled herself into the dark, churning river below. It all happened in the blink of an eye, too fast for anyone to react. "Tiem!"
Scholar Chi's scream tore through the night as he reached the scene. In the midst of shock and terror, Nyan acted without thinking. He threw off his coat, took a running start, and plunged into the freezing water. Grateful for Scholar Chi's past help with medicine for his mother, Nyan could not let Tiem die. The river was swift and icy, cutting at his skin. He struggled against the current, searching desperately for her in the darkness. The three men on the bank hastily grabbed ropes and shone lanterns to assist. After what felt like a hopeless struggle, Nyan's hands finally touched something soft. He clutched it and with all his strength began pulling. With the help of the others on the shore, they finally dragged Tiem up. But it was too late. Her beautiful face was pale and bluish under the lantern light. Her breath had stopped. Her eyes were open, empty, soulless. Only a cold corpse remained. The curse had struck again, right before the eyes of the four guards. Scholar Chi's wailing merged with the howling wind and rolling thunder, composing a funeral dirge of grief and despair amidst the stormy night.
Tiem's death was a devastating blow to Nyiha village. The beautiful, gentle girl, like a freshly bloomed flower, had withered too soon, leaving everyone heartbroken. The one who suffered the most was Scholar Chi. After arranging his daughter's burial, he was determined to summon the most famous spirit medium in the region to perform a soul-calling ritual, not only to console Tiem's spirit, but also to uncover the root of all these tragedies. The ritual altar was set up right at the spot where Tiem had fallen into the river. At noon, as the sun shone brightly, black clouds suddenly gathered from nowhere, covering the sky. The wind rose in gusts, swirling dust and dry leaves into a haze. The atmosphere turned unusually dark and cold. The spirit medium prepared an intricate ritual. On a bamboo table, he placed a clay pot containing 9 rice field crabs, 9 frogs, and 9 eels, water-dwelling creatures believed to act as guiding messengers. Beside it lay a straw mat displaying 9 paper effigies, a paper boat, and 2 paper soldiers. Additionally, there were 9 bowls of white porridge, 9 plates of popcorn, and 9 types of fruits offered to wandering spirits. At the water's edge, the medium placed 2 altars, one dedicated to Haba Tuiquan, the water deity, the other to Tiem and the 7 previous victims. The most crucial element of the ritual was a 10-meter-long bridge made of white cloth, stretched from the riverbank but not touching the water. This soul bridge was the path for spirits to travel from the underworld back to the living. Along the bridge, 7 paper flags bearing the sacred script of Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva were planted. A healthy young rooster, confined in a cage and previously forced to swallow a talisman, served as the sacred guide bird, tasked with finding and leading the souls of the departed. After nearly 2 hours of preparation, everything was ready. The spirit medium inspected the setup and turned to Scholar Chi. This soul calling is extremely dangerous. Tiem died during a cursed hour. We need someone with a purely yin life force, the right zodiac, for the spirit to inhabit. I've calculated carefully, and her cousin Swan is most compatible. But Swan had just given birth and was too weak to endure the ritual. In the concern, Tam, another female relative, stepped forward, volunteering to act as the substitute. Tam, a devout vegetarian Buddhist with spiritual sensitivity, was confirmed by the medium, after calculating with his finger-counting technique, to possess a purely yin life force perfectly suitable for the ritual. At noon, the ceremony officially began. The medium lit 3 incense sticks, chanting a ritual text in a haunting, mournful voice. Villagers and the family knelt behind him, bowing each time he bowed.
Thick incense smoke mingled with the gray, overcast sky, creating a misty, eerie atmosphere. A boat carrying the paper effigies, the clay pot, and the sacred rooster was rowed into the middle of the river. But as soon as the boat reached the center, a strange event occurred. The previously calm river suddenly erupted with violent waves, churning as if a massive underwater monster had awakened. In an instant, the boat was swallowed by a whirlpool, vanishing without a trace. At the same time, the cloth soul bridge and the 7 paper flags were torn apart by some invisible force, scattering in the wind. The crowd panicked. The medium's face turned pale, and he shouted, "It's ruined! Quickly, bring her garment here!" Scholar Chi frantically handed TM's dress to the medium. He drew a talisman in the air and threw it into the river. But like the boat, the garment was immediately dragged under. Clearly, some powerful force was determined to prevent TM's spirit from returning.
Faced with the terrifying events that had just occurred, the spirit medium realized he was dealing with an extremely vengeful spirit, or a powerful, malevolent force. Sweat poured down his face as he hastily formed hand seals, stamping his feet in the Koi Kuong stance, muttering prayers to invoke the assistance of the local earth deity. Only after arranging a set of divination papers and confirming the god's presence did he attempt to summon Thiem's spirit once again. Strangely, despite using all his magical methods, continuously striking the wooden block and chanting incantations, Thiem's spirit stubbornly refused to enter Thumb's body. Thumb remained motionless, her eyes tightly shut. The medium muttered, "Strange. This spirit is incredibly stubborn. There must be a great grievance behind this." At that moment, a chilling wind swept through, sending shivers down everyone's spines. A white figure flashed before the medium's eyes like lightning. Immediately after, Thumb, wearing a red scarf, suddenly tilted her head back and emitted a harsh, guttural laugh. But it was not the laugh of a woman. It was the hoarse, terrifying laugh of an old man. The crowd froze in horror. The spirit inside Thumb slowly opened its eyes. They were no longer Thumb's gentle eyes, but sharp, vengeful ones. It stared directly at Scholar Chi, who was trembling, and rasped, "Do you know who I am?" Scholar Chi's fear made him stammer, Who are you? Why have you entered my granddaughter?" "Feed me first, then I'll tell you." The spirit growled. The medium hurried the women to bring offerings. 2 trembling villagers carried a large basket of rice. To everyone's astonishment, the spirit in Thumb squatted on the ground, eating greedily with her bare hands. In mere moments, the entire basket was empty. After eating, the spirit pointed directly at Scholar Chi, enunciating each word with a harsh tone. "5 years ago, you bought the land by the river to build a granary. Beneath that land were several graves of us brothers. You exhumed some, but left me and 2 others behind. I came to warn you in dreams, but you had the spirit medium perform a ritual with a black dog to suppress us, preventing our souls from passing on. Now I see the offering. I've entered this one's body to inform you." Scholar Chi turned pale and clasped his hands in desperate prayers. Indeed, back then I moved some burial jars. I am only a mortal. I beg for your forgiveness. Where are you so I can properly raise you?" The spirit laughed, gnarling. "We lie directly beneath the east wall of your granary. Build a new one for us, like you did for the others." The medium then asked, "Do you know why this girl's spirit refuses to ascend?" The spirit replied, "This girl did not die because a demon dragged her.
She was startled on the bridge by a thunderclap and fell into the river. She refuses to ascend because her grievance has not been resolved. Once it is, she will rise herself. Then the spirit turned to Scholar Chi. Remember to properly bury us, and we will protect you. With that, the spirit exited Thumb's body. Thumb immediately collapsed, unconscious. The soul-calling ritual had failed. Heavy rain began to fall as the crowd slowly dispersed, hearts weighed down by questions and an even deeper fear. What was Thiem's unresolved grievance, and would the deadly curse at the stone bridge truly ever end?
After the failed spirit-calling ritual, the atmosphere in Yiha village became even darker. Scholar Chi hurriedly ordered people to dig along the east wall of his granary and indeed found 3 unmarked graves. He had the graves rebuilt and performed elaborate offerings, hoping to resolve the matter. The villagers breathed a sigh of relief, believing that the curse had finally been uncovered. A month passed peacefully. No deaths occurred. The watch team at the stone bridge began to relax, assuming that the curse had been lifted. But they were mistaken. On the night of the 14th of the 12th lunar month, the last night of the year, the moon shone brightly. A biting north wind blew through, chilling to the bone. The 4 guards huddled by the fire, sipping wine and chatting. Suddenly, Jan froze when he saw a figure on the bridge. This time it was a young girl, unfamiliar to the village. The strangest thing was her walk. Her legs dragged as she moved, her whole body swaying unnaturally, like a puppet with broken strings, head down, long hair hiding her face. Jan sensed that something was terribly wrong. He shouted a warning and together with Jan rushed onto the bridge. The girl quickened her pace. When she reached the exact spot where previous victims had leapt into the river, she nimbly climbed the bridge's edge, ready to throw herself in. Luckily, Jan was a step faster, grabbing the hem of her dress and pulling her back. Both of them fell hard onto the bridge. Before they could get up, the girl let out a wild scream and lunged again, determined to jump. At that moment, Mao and Yam arrived. The 4 strong men struggled to hold the petite girl. She was unnaturally strong, thrashing, clawing, screaming obscenities. During the struggle, Jan was accidentally kicked squarely in the face. He fell backwards, nose bleeding. Enraged, he roared, "Damn you! You want to die or what?" The 4 men finally managed to lift the girl and move her away from the bridge. The noise awakened the entire village, and people rushed out. Under the torchlight, the crowd was horrified. The girl's face was pale, her eyes blood-red with anger, and a chilling smile curled her lips. Suddenly, she stared directly at Jan, gritted her teeth, and spoke in a bitter, spine-chilling voice that did not seem her own. "You damned dog! You are Hun! I will kill you! Do you still have the ivory comb you gave me? I am Thiem! I am Thiem!" The crowd froze. Jan turned pale, trembling uncontrollably. Elder Yam, the oldest person in the village, hurriedly had someone break a fresh mulberry branch. Following her instructions, a brave young man struck the girl sharply on both shoulders with the branch. To everyone's amazement, the girl became terrified, shrieking in agony before collapsing unconscious. The curse was far from over. It had returned, and this time it had called out a specific person.
Since hearing that venomous curse, Hoen's mind was thrown into chaos. Why did that strange girl, or rather the spirit inhabiting her, know his name and mention the ivory comb? A vague sense of unease and guilt gripped his thoughts. Exhausted from the struggle with the girl, Hoen asked the other 3 for permission to return home and rest. Clutching the half-burned torch, he trudged along the familiar dirt path alone. The moon was bright tonight, but as its light filtered through the leaves, it created eerie shapes dancing across the ground. The wind still howled mournfully. Passing by the village houses, he noticed talismans stuck on every door. A familiar sight, yet tonight it filled him with dread. To reach his home, he had to cross the desolate graveyard at the village's edge. His heart trembled. Gripping the torch tightly, he forced himself to walk faster. The moonlight revealed old, moss-covered tombstones. The silence was terrifying. Suddenly, the torch in his hand, blazing just moments before, went out, though there was no wind. Hohen froze, his heart skipping a beat. Goosebumps covered his entire body. He stood frozen in the encroaching darkness. At that moment, he heard a strange sound. From behind him came footsteps, yet not just ordinary footsteps. Mixed with the thud-thud of his steps was a wet squelching, like someone walking on water, drops dripping onto the ground. Hohen quickly turned around, but behind him was nothing. Only the empty dirt road and the silent bamboo shadows. The sound vanished. Just as the fear began to subside slightly, Hohen turned to continue walking. But as he did, a cloud drifted away, revealing the full moon once more. Right in front of him, he had no idea when it had appeared, stood a figure. A figure with pale, ghostly skin, clothes soaked through, bearing a wide grin with gleaming white teeth. Hohen barely had time to scream before the figure vanished, leaving only its chilling laughter echoing from all directions. Hohen's whole body shook uncontrollably. He tried to scream, then bolted, but his throat felt constricted, his limbs icy cold. He struggled just to lift his feet. After a short distance, something suddenly fell, plop, from a banyan branch beside the road and landed right in front of him. Hohen was so terrified that he nearly lost control of his bladder. The object slowly rolled toward him. Under the moonlight, he realized it was a human head. The face, mouth wide open in a terrifying grin, was Theme, Scholar Chi's daughter. The same ghastly mocking laughter rang out as the head bounced lightly before disappearing into the darkness. Overwhelmed by sheer terror, Hohen no longer knew what to do. Using every ounce of strength, he ran headlong, sprinting desperately towards his home.
Huan burst through the gate, lunged into the yard, and collapsed onto the ground, gasping like a man on the brink of death. The loud commotion startled his wife, Mrs. Huan, who had been sleeping inside. She rushed out, horrified to see her husband sprawled on the ground, his face pale, eyes wide open, staring blankly. "Good heavens! What happened to you? Why are you running as if chased by a ghost?" Mrs. Huan exclaimed, helping her husband up, her voice trembling with worry. In his wife's arms, Huan felt a momentary sense of relief, but almost immediately, an even more terrifying sensation gripped him. He sensed a frigid, bone-chilling aura radiating from his own wife. Along with it came a nauseating stench, the putrid, fetid smell of mud and rotting flesh. Panic surged through him. Huan forced his wife backward with all his strength, then grabbed the oil lamp from the nearby altar, shaking as he shone the flickering light on her face. Under the dim glow, her features appeared the same, but her eyes were completely different. They were no longer the gentle, concerned eyes he knew. Instead, they were hollow, lifeless, staring at him without blinking. And when Mrs. Huan slowly parted her lips, a grotesque smile stretched unnaturally wide, reaching almost to her ears. Huan stumbled backward, hitting a support beam, stammering, You're not my wife. Who are you?" The entity inhabiting Mrs. Huan said nothing. It slowly stood upright, the joints in its body cracking with horrifying sounds. It advanced toward him, leaving trails of filthy, reeking liquid on the floor with each step.
Its shadow stretched grotesquely across the walls under the flickering lamp, deforming into the shape of a monstrous demon. Huan wanted to scream, but no sound emerged. His entire body felt frozen, paralyzed. He knew there was no escape. The demon had followed him home, and now it resided in the very person he had loved, the woman he had shared his bed with. The terror he felt was no longer fear alone. It was utter, crushing despair.
The ivory comb. Do you still keep it, Huan? The entity inhabiting Mrs. Huan's body spoke with a chilling, vengeful tone. It was the same voice of the girl from the bridge, the one who had claimed to be Thiem, but now shrill, eerie, and utterly inhuman. Huan froze in disbelief. The ivory comb. That was the gift he had given to a girl, but not Thiem. It was Luyen, the first victim, the one who had started this chain of deadly curses. The sole family man the villagers had silently cursed all these years, none other than Huan himself. Back then, despite being married, he had secretly carried on an affair with Luyen, promising her everything. When Luyen became pregnant, fearing scandal and dishonor, he ruthlessly abandoned her. He never imagined that his cruel act would drive her to the edge, sowing a terrifying curse upon the entire village. Why Thiem? Huan stammered, trembling. The entity chuckled, a sound so cold and mocking it sent shivers crawling over his skin. Thiem? That girl died by accident. She slipped and fell into the river. But her spirit was weak, and she died at the exact cursed hour, so I held it back. I borrowed her body, borrowed her name to come after you, Huan. The other 7 were just substitutes. You are the one I've been hunting. You must pay for what you've done. So it was true. The real spirit behind all the horrors was Luyen. Thiem's ghost had been merely a tool, a vessel for Luyen's vengeance. Thiem's death was an accident, but her wronged soul had been exploited by Luyen, unable to ascend peacefully. Today is my death anniversary, Huan. Come down with me for some fun. The entity inhabiting Mrs. Huan's body lunged. Huan, drained of strength, could no longer resist. He only had time to see his wife's face distort grotesquely, her eye sockets oozing a black viscous liquid, and a hand as cold as ice clutch his throat. His consciousness dimmed, slipping into eternal darkness. The next morning, the villagers found both Huan and Mrs. Huan dead inside their home. Huan's body lay in a horrified pose, eyes wide open, face dark purple as if strangled. Mrs. Huan lay next to him, cold and lifeless, without a single wound. Their deaths were officially ruled as a sudden illness, but no one believed such an explanation. From that day onward, no one ever died on the stone bridge on the 14th again. The curse seemed to have ended, having claimed its retribution. But Niha village could never return to its former peace. The haunting memories of the 7 dreadful nights under the stone bridge, the spirit of Luyen in red, and the mysterious deaths of the Huan couple forever instilled an indelible fear in the hearts of the villagers. The stone bridge still stands, weathered and silent, a mute witness to a tragic tale of cruelty and vengeance. And some say that on nights when the moon shines bright, one can sometimes see a figure in red wandering across the bridge, weeping quietly for a fate long gone and for a vengeance that has finally been fulfilled.